For the sake of argument, then, let us accept the predicates laid out here, that we do indeed face important demographic change, with the West on the short end, with the Soviet bloc gaining population moderately, and with third world population numbers going up very rapidly. Ooh. We posit further, as explained in the previous chapter, that in any calculus of power, population matters. And now let us ask, what might the geopolitical world of the future look like? As we look ahead, then, we should consider, or reconsider, three ideas. The first idea is this: power is relative. Consider an example from the world of sports. Boxer A may be in perfect shape, with a lightning jab and dazzling footwork. But if Boxer B is bigger, better, and tougher, Boxer A is a loser. Power is relative. The second idea is this. As described earlier, the mechanics of low fertility are such that the West may be headed for a difficult time in terms of domestic economic well-being. Or to understate it, Western economic vigor may not be as vigorous as it has been, or might have been absent the birth dearth. After all, the US, Europe, and Japan will be aging, with fewer and fewer young, energetic workers, and possibly fewer fresh ideas, fueling the lower rungs of the social demographic period. Many important economic markets may be disrupted, at least temporarily. What happens to the housing industry of the Western world when the number of housing vacancies due to death approaches the number of new entrants into the housing market? There will likely be massive problems in the social welfare fields, particularly in regard to pensions and elderly health. There will be a dislocating shift from growth-oriented societies to no-growth societies, and then likely in most nations onto a condition of absolute population decline, a sequence which has never been experienced since the advent of the Industrial Revolution. In short, then, the Western community may be facing a situation in which, at the very time its population is declining in relation to its actual and potential competitors, it is also losing some of the economic magic touch at home. At the least, it will likely be enduring a bumpy transition period. Third, if the West were even standing pat demographically, while the rest of the world kept expanding, the case could be advanced that, relying on their technological and organizational superiority, the industrial democracies could protect their position and perhaps even enhance the growth of democratic values elsewhere. They would be seen as mature, stable societies, but a continuing birth dearth at home would seem to reduce that possibility. After all, the projections show the totality of the Western community on a path that actually shrinks and at an ever-accelerating pace. This combination of ideas, that power is relative, that we may face economic turbulence, that we will be shrinking in number, could present the West with a very stiff challenge. How will it play out? We continue our speculation. Consider first the Soviets. Today, the US and the Soviet Union are roughly equal in population. The Soviets are 15% larger. Eek. When one projects the current fertility and immigration rates of the superpowers into the future, one comes up with this rough and simple result. The Soviet Union gains in demographic power relative to the US. See charts, pages 42 and 55. The wild card, of course, is what will happen within the Soviet Union as its ethnic composition changes. The Soviet demographic situation has already been sketched out. They have moderate fertility rates in the European parts of the Soviet Union, at about the replacement level, and in addition, very high fertility rates in Central Asian parts, which are mostly Muslim. The net Soviet results result is a TFR of 2.4, and thus substantial population growth ahead. Even if one assumes a reasonable decline in Soviet Central Asian fertility, the Soviet Union will still go from 275 million people today to a population of around 365 million by the end of today's baby's lifetime at about 2065. At the same time, the U.S. population, projecting current rates, will crest and then likely decline. U.S. population in 2065 would be about 278 million and shrinking. So, unless something changes, the two superpowers will go from a position of near parity in population, a 15% margin for the Soviets, to one approaching a 30% Soviet advantage and growing in the Soviets' favor. But it is worse than that. Because of the aging effect of the birth dearth, the Soviet working age population will then be close to 50% larger than that of its counterpart in the U.S. According to UN projections, the demographic tilt toward the Soviets is even sharper, according to U.S. Census Bureau calculations. See page 42. Yeah, there's bugs on me.
There's a spider.
Ugh. Where?
It's gone. It was just a jumping spider.
Oh, little baby. However, beneath this growth of demographic power, the Soviets may have some serious problems that might stem from the different fertility rates among the various Soviet nationalities. Just after the Bolshevik Revolution, the large majority of the Soviet population was Russian. Today, it is only about 50% Russian. By 2065, that fraction will have shrunk further, perhaps down to 40%, or even somewhat lower. There are scholarly arguments about how much anti-Russian activity exists in Soviet Asia, but it is a region which harbored Soviet Asia. Was this book in the 80s?
Yep.
Oh, okay. There are scholarly arguments about how much anti-Russian activity exists in Soviet Asia, but it is a region which harbored, within living memory, anti-Bolshevik Basmachi guerrillas. In late 1986, there were major anti-Russian demonstrations in the Soviet Republic of Kazakhstan. Many Soviet Central Asians share ethnic and religious ties with their neighbors in China, Turkey, Afghanistan, and Iran. Not exactly areas known for peaceful and harmonious relationships these days. There have been journalistic reports regarding incidents of violent unrest between Soviet Russian and Soviet Tajik troops stationed in Afghanistan. Certainly, some Soviet Asians are quite conscious of the international political implications of their higher birth rates. Indeed, some look to the future and privately refer to the phenomenon as victory in the bedroom. In addition, there are other important non-Asian minorities in the Soviet Union that are at least somewhat restive. The Ukrainians, more than 40 million strong, come most immediately to mind. As it plays out, it is likely that even if the Central Asian republics remain docile under Soviet rule, there will be some demographic problems for the Kremlin. For instance, language barriers obviously loosen national cohesion, and today at least 2/3 of the non-Russian population in the USSR is not fully fluent in Russian. About 90% of the Soviet officer corps is Russian, but the rank-and-file soldiers necessarily reflect the ethnic composition of the population at large, soon to be less than 50% Russian. It is likely, then, that an ever larger fraction of Soviet fighting men will find it difficult to fully understand their officers, many of whom they hate in any event. Demographer Murray Feshbach Feshbach makes a rough estimate that by 2020, because of differential birth rates and changing age distribution,